For the third year in a row, a new season of Smash opens in spectacular fashion, featuring not only the return of the storied Luminosity Makes Moves series, but also the 10th rendition of Japan's most influential major series, Umebura. A wild weekend was bound to happen. Spread across these two events, 75 of the 2023 mid-year's LumiRank Top 100 participated, easily making one of the most stacked weekends for Smash Ultimate of all time. A new era of Smash has been ushered in by the so-called Four Horsemen, consisting of Acola, Miya, Spargo, and Sonix. Fittingly, each of the big events this weekend had two of them in attendance, along with a slew of other top players. The outcome of these events would set the direction this coming season would take, so while the viewers' attention was split between the two events, each event had explosive gameplay in its own right. I'm Easy Freezy, a part of the LumiRank team, and I'm back again to cover this double feature of events that kicked off Ultimate's 2024 competitive season. Let's get into it. Let's start with Tri-State's premier event, Luminosity Makes Big Moves. Like all of its other recent namesake events, a Steve ban was enforced and the entire bracket was best of 5. Given both Saturday's bracket being only pools, and that all sets were best of 5, one would expect day 1 to be relatively upset-free. Well, one would be wrong. 4 top 32 seeds were put into losers on day 1, those being Aaron and MK Big Boss, as well as 2 of Tri-State's very finest, Quid who lost to Kazuya Prodigy Wilds, and DeBuzz who suffered an upset factor 11 at the hands of Spritzy the Toon Link. To absolutely no one's surprise, the first seed of the event, Sonix, made to winner's side of 2024's first major basically unscathed. His only game dropped was the Chunky Kong, and his match versus Maister was an especially brutal one, forcing him to bring out the infamous Pocket Sora. To close out 2023, Sonix made it into Grand Finals 4 majors in a row, and even won 2 of them. Naturally, he was looking to bring that momentum into the new year with him, and boy did he succeed. Facing him, however, was a player that was more of a wild card. To be able to have consistency with a character like Incineroar, by all means, should be impossible. Yet against all the odds, he's gotten there. Seemingly sent to just eliminate Georgia, he reversed 3-0'd Kola and took down Jazzo. He also beat Sinji, who himself earned the ire of the crowd by clutching out against crowd favorite WebJP. It's no secret at this point that MKLeo is in a bit of a slump. While he had been at the top of the game for a while now, with him being the uncontested best player for a majority of the game's lifespan, that has come to an end recently. The rest of the field has caught up and even left him behind in some cases. Some people speculated that the moment when the go of the game would hang up the controller was coming soon. Well, if it was going to happen, it wouldn't be this weekend. Showing his most motivated and inspired gameplay in the while, he clutched up the Joker duo versus Omega before defeating the currently unstoppable Spargo to secure himself a spot in winner's top 8. Meeting him there was none other than his greatest rival in Ultimate's history, Tweek. Being the defending champion, as well as having gone an entire year without winning another major, Tweek had a lot of pressure to perform, and his path to the top seemed to reflect that. He had to face Dark Wizzy, who beat him last time they played, Tilde, whom he ended up going Game 5 against, and Shattuck, whose character handed him a sound defeat just 5 months ago at Super Smash Con at the hands of Neo. Nonetheless, although none of the matches were easy by any means, the hometown hero set his sights on greater goals. His biggest rival for number 1 in the US, Light, would have to walk a similarly thorny path to reach top 8, although seemed to have it a bit rougher even still. Troubles began in the first round of top 128. The release Smub would go up 2-0 in their set, showing his proficiency in the matchup, owing to his numerous matches versus ZD and Dexter, MDVA Spacey mains, and it seemed he had the perfect grasp on how to handle Fox's aggression. Light barely managed to reverse 3-0, although the set's enjoyment factor was unfortunately hampered by the continuous technical issues throughout it. His next set was another crowd draw, WebJP, who had beaten him at Luminosity Makes Moves Miami just over 2 months ago. And although Light managed to bring him to Game 5 this time, it wasn't enough. What followed after, though, was a 5-set losers run to top 8, where he beat some of the US finest, with his wins over Shaq and Muyas being the highlights. Another space he had managed to sneak into the top 8, but it might be someone you didn't expect. If you had missed your dose of NA Falco in the past few months, this guy's the culprit. He hadn't attended a single event since Luminosity Makes Moves Miami, and even before that, his attendance was few and far between, as he had only played in 3 majors the entire calendar year of 2023. But similar to another fan favorite who had taken a break for a while and came back to an event of the series, to call Tilde's comeback anything but successful would be a lie. On his way to top 8, he had beaten amazing players like Anathema and the recent Rising Star Beast Mode Paul, and as mentioned earlier, fell to Tweek in a decisive Game 5. For a while, the Luminosity curse seemed to be very real, but almost as if to make up for that, this time, all 4 current members of Luminosity made top 8. Maister's path through winners was pretty unremarkable, and though he only had 1 more set to reach top 8, it wouldn't be an easy one by any stretch of the imagination. Not only was his opponent a top 10 player, it was one he had some set history with. Maister and Riddles had played 4 times up to this point, and Maister hadn't managed yet to win a single one of their past encounters. This would change here, however, as Maister didn't even let the set go to Game 5, beating Riddles for the first time ever. To round out our top 8, we have another Mexican player, and the 4th out of the 8. Up to top 16, he had probably the best tournament out of any one of these players. Not only did he not drop a single game, he beat one of his biggest rivals in Kurama. These two had a 3-2 head-to-head record going into the event, and although Spargo won the past 2, they still went Game 5. This time, however, Spargo shut him out 3-0. To qualify the top 8, Spargo had to face MKLeo. Although Spargo had overtaken him in the rankings, the dynamic in their head-to-head hadn't changed. To make matters worse, the person he had to face to qualify the top 8 was WebJP. Considering Spargo lost to Void's Sheik at Summit, it was normal to be concerned, but betraying expectations, Spargo not only beat Web's Sheik, he destroyed him. Although the composition of top 8, especially in the exact way it happened here, might have not been expected, the matches seemed to be poetically slated, as both of the losers' 7th matches, White vs Spargo and Maister vs Tilde, had happened quite recently. White and Spargo have a pretty even track record. No, scratch that, exactly even. Both having taken 6 sets over each other in Ultimate's lifespan. But although that is the case, one might believe White to be the favorite, as their last encounter went 3-0 in his way. Maister and Tilde, on the other hand, had a very unique set history. For this match, they played thrice, and each of their sets went 3-0. But while Maister took the first 2 sets, Tilde held the upper hand in their last encounter, which happened exactly a year ago at Let's Make Big Moves 2023. So given that knowledge, one would expected the winners of these previous bouts to come out victorious once again. But betraying that belief, both Spargo and Maister managed to advance in the bracket. The winner semis matches, on the other hand, couldn't be more different. On one hand, you have the age-old classic, the El Clasico of Smash Ultimate, MKLeo versus Tweek. On the other hand, you have Sonix versus Skyjay. This matchup between two players who had been seeing unfathomable improvement the past year had mostly been taking place online before this. Their only offline matchup before this was a 3-0 in Sonic's favor at Smash Factor 9. Although MKLeo and Tweek have played so often, this character matchup was a new one. Tweek City was specifically developed to counter the Joker, which led to MKLeo opting to use a mixture of Aegis and Byleth in the matchups. Considering they hadn't worked in their last 4 matches though, maybe a return to his trusted old main would bring some change. And although a victory in Game 3 seemed promising, Game 4 Leo couldn't overcome Tweek's onslaught of offense in these very close games. The other side of bracket seemed to have been a foregone conclusion. Not only did Sonix dominate their last encounter, pitting the slowest character in the game against Sonic just seemed like an unusual cruel form of punishment. And the first game seemed to validate that feeling. But then Skyjay took a game. 2 more nail-biter games followed, and the crowd was electric at this possible huge upset. But reality is a cruel mistress, as Sonic's endurance proved to be too much to overcome. Due to these results, something quite interesting happened. Now, 4 of the 6 remaining players who left in bracket were Mexican, a type of regional dominance that hadn't happened for a while. But all of them were currently sitting in losers, meaning at most one of them would be able to take their shot at the title in grand finals. Maister vs MKLeo is a matchup that has happened a bunch of times already, and unfortunately, this one didn't go much differently to their other matches. But there was one quite interesting development. After going down 0-2, Maister brought out a new character. Not the Sora, and obviously not the Steve, but the Wario? Yes, you heard right. And although it wasn't much of a challenge this time, only time can tell if that will change in the future. Meanwhile, although Spargo and Skyjay's head-to-head in 2023 was in Skyjay's favor, Spargo seemed to have figured out the matchup. Not only was their last match a 3-0, he also swiftly dispatched them here in a 3-1 fashion. All of this led to the best of the event, dare I say the weekend. Spargo vs MKLeo, the rematch. Both of these players seemed to be at peak of their game. It went Game 5, and with a set like this, how could it not? But as if to show the baton had been handed over, that Spargo was the only one that could be called the best player in Mexico, he came out victorious. Winners Finals, on the other hand, was a very rare one. Despite the fact that both of them were ranked top 5 on last year's mid-year ranking, and they co-attended a whopping 11 events, they hadn't played a single time last year. After a rather swift 3-1, securing Tweek a spot in Grand Finals, Losers Finals was a matchup that everyone would be intimately familiar with at this point. After 2 games, which Spargo had taken with a combination of Cloud and Corrin, it seemed likely that this year's top 4 would be the exact same as last year's Let's Make Big Moves, Tweek first, Spargo second, Sonix third, and MKLeo fourth. Sonix didn't seem to like this outcome, as he clinically dismantled the Cloud and clutched it out versus the Corrin. This meant that Grand Finals was between 2 members of LG, cementing how well an accomplishment that only one org before this, Zeta Division, has achieved. Contrary to what the scoreline might suggest, Grand Finals was very close. Not only did Tweek have to mount a significant comeback multiple times, it seemed like Sonic would take Game 3, until one of the most anticlimactic finishes to a major ever happened. This marks the 3rd time Tweek won an event from the Makes Big Moves series, as well as a streak of Tri-State continuing to defend this event from invaders. Umebura continues to surpass itself, as it had more entrants as well as more international competitors than it did last year. Ran by the amazing Tio and top player Umeki, it had been a cornerstone of Japanese Smash for all of Smash 4 and pre-quarantine Smash Ultimate. And although the series is a rare occurrence nowadays, its importance hasn't diminished one bit. Being the 3rd biggest Japanese Smash Ultimate tournament of all time, the stage was set for it to be amazing. Considering it was a 3-day event, Day 1 only featured round 1 pools. Even still, 2 top 32 seeds managed to find themselves in losers bracket at the end of it, namely Gax and Kameme. While Gax's loss could be seen from a mile away, as Sin is an Ice Climbers player, a matchup Gax has historically struggled with, and someone who has reached 2,400 on Smashmate, the case of Kameme is a bit more curious. He lost to the Shulk main AA, who is probably most famous for being a top player in the Queen Metroid Spirit mode SSQM. Although acola is still widely considered to be #1 in the world, his throne has been the shakiest since he took it over by storm. After a performance at Watch the Throne, which he wasn't too happy with, acola had planned to not go to Umebura. He even deregistered, but some friends convinced him to join the tournament at the last minute. In his run to top 8, virtually no problems presented itself. There were only 2 players he dropped the game to. One of them was Shuton, while the other was Leaf, the Robin player. His run included 2 of the 3 US invaders, Cosmos and Void. Although his choice of character might not make him a fan favorite, it is undeniable that a Smash 4 veteran finding his groove again can only be met with joy. And that's exactly what's happening to Ken right now. This marks the 4th time in a row he makes top 8 at a major, with 2 of them being some of the toughest majors of the last year, with Watch the Throne and Poor Priority. And before that, you'd have to go back to June to find a major he didn't top 8. To top 8 this event, he unfortunately had to beat some fan favorites such as Ouch and Torgiri. Miya's path, on the other hand, was actually pretty tough. Before top 8 even started, he had to face 2 players who had a pretty good shot at beating him. Jagaimo, who was the cause of Miya's worst placement in 2023, had previously eliminated him for 49th at Kagaribi 9. The other player was Kameme, who had managed to beat Miya 3 times last year. Even still, Miya didn't let that phase him at all, as he didn't even need to take it to the decisive Game 5 versus either of them. Glutonny's performance here was of great interest to many people. It was his first time in Japan, and that unfamiliarity has proven fatal to many travelers in the past. Wario's also a very interesting topic, as the character was widespread in the nation before quarantine as a counterpick, but his nerfs completely killed any popularity he had. With that being said, his bracket was relatively smooth sailing until his top 8 qualifier, where he met with Doramigi. Having to reverse 3-0 the 14-year-old Min, this could be a stand-in for his encounter with Proto Bonham that we somehow never got to witness. After losing both his sponsor of over 5 years and the house provided to him by Sun Sister, most people would not attend an event the same week, let alone perform well at the same event. But Shuton is made from a different cloth. He defeated 2 veterans of the group, Abadango and T, whom he has a combined 39 sets against throughout Ultimate's lifespan, as well as Ashimo, in a set that's some of the most electrifying gameplay this event had to offer. Shuton's opponent would be someone who he has already become intimately familiar with. Yaura started off his season strong with a 5th place finish at his first major Delta 7. Carrying this momentum into the new year, a loss to a player he had been 0-2 against before this, Doramigi, wouldn't discourage him. Yaura seemed to be a slayer of fan favorites this event. He made short work of Zachary, eliminated Japan's best Roy Alice, and worst of all, prevented Umebura's Tio Umeki from top-8ing his own Super Major in a tense Game 5 set. Kameme's back half of 2023 was much less action-packed than his standout first half, but that doesn't mean it was bad. His last top 8 appearance at a major was back in July at Smash Factor, and since then, his attendance has been scarce due to raising his daughter, and while he did well at some regionals, it just wasn't quite living up to expectations. That's why him top 8ing this event was such a relief, especially because it was no walk in the park, as he had to overcome a Game 5 versus Raflo, as well as defeat 2 of Japan's best players, Zachary and Yoshidora, who took him to Game 5 as well. Facing the father of a child was someone who could still comfortably be called a child. Although he did defeat 2 top 20 players in Yaura and T, the other players he had already proven he could beat before this event. Some new opponents would be nice, preferably some invaders, as he has rarely had the chance to play against people outside of Japan, and he certainly got what he wanted. Although he didn't quite manage to take down the titan that is Glutonny, he got another chance at his very next set. Staring him down was another top player, Zamba. Now, though this was a matchup Min was supposed to struggle in, Doramigi made quick work of him, showing that he can leave a hell of an impression at his first North American tournament later in the year at Battle of BC6. Interestingly enough, Kameme and Doramigi have already played each other before, at Maisuma Top 13 in June last year. Back then, the youngster came out on top in one of the most impressive tournaments each of them had last year. But there was something that Kameme had up his sleeve, something that would give him such a huge advantage. A secret weapon only a select few have in their arsenal. Kameme's entrance featured his adorable little child, and that seemed to give Kameme what he needed to advance to the next round. If someone asked you the name Samus's worst matchup, you would probably think of Olimar, right? Given that, what did Yaura do to deserve this? It's only the 2nd week of the season, and this is his already 2nd time he has to face Shuton, without doubt the best Olimar in the world. Bounty Hunters, however, don't have the words give up in their dictionary. Despite the matchup, Yaura did the best he could. Although he didn't quite manage to take the set, managing to take it to Game 5 twice in a row shows that overcoming this obstacle is well within the realms of possibility. On the winner's side, meanwhile, you'd have a true battle of the generations, as 2 players who are approaching 30 would face off against 2 youngins who hadn't even turned 20. Acola versus Ken was a matchup that wasn't exactly a rarity before this, and while the character matchup might not make for a gameplay many would call enjoyable, even though it featured one of the most unexpected reversals ever, it results did leave us with some food for thought. Ken was one of the only 7 unique people to take a rank set off of Acola in 2023. With him being unable to do that once again, it just further supports the hypothesis that Akola's consistency wasn't about to stop anytime soon. At this point, it has been over 9 months since Acola lost to a player not named Sonix, Spargo, or Miya. Glutonny and Miya, on the other hand, only had played twice before this, each having taken 1 set. But although that was the case, Miya was widely considered to be the favorite. The set Gluto took was big in December of 2022, when Miya wasn't quite yet the beast he is today. Add that to the fact that Glutonny's head-to-head versus the other Game & Watch was less than ideal. The outcome seemed obvious, which makes Glutonny's win over Miya even more cathartic. You see, although Gluto had what was very likely his best season ever last year, there seemed to be a ceiling as to how high he could rise. He was able to beat Spargo, but the other 3 members of the top 5 seemed too tall of a mountain to climb. But if you can beat Miya, who is to say acola, or god forbid Sonix, isn't next? In losers corners, we had two classic rivalries. While Ken vs Kameme had been a common occurrence at the start of Ultimate's lifespan, Miya vs Shuton has been a rather recent development. Still, it has been an essential part of Ultimate's landscape as of recent, being the second most common top player matchup of 2023. In both those matches, the person who had the advantage in the head-to-head, that being Kameme and Miya, won. But to be fair, Miya had to pull out all the tricks in the book to do it. In their last encounter, Miya had surprised Shuton with his Steve. But this time, he had to rely on his trusted main to bring him back from a 2-1 deficit his Steve put him in. Continuing on his warpath, Miya would once again face Glutonny, who had been sent to loser's bracket by acola. He had been the first player to win a major this season, and if he could just get to Grands, the second one wasn't out of the question. And that seemed to have been enough of a motivator to defeat Glutonny, with the exact same score he had been defeated earlier this year. Grands would once again be, at this point, a classic, acola versus Miya. And this set had major implications for the rest of the year. If Miya won from losers, it would probably mean that he'd finally figured out acola for good, as he had a 3-set win streak on him before this event. Naturally, acola tried his best not to let this come to fruition. Down 90%, it seemed as though he would have to do his best in a reset. But then Game 5 acola kicked in. Hit after hit, he clawed himself back, before eventually closing out the game with a classic back air. Those events, marking the real start of the season, showed us something interesting. While the 4 horsemen are certainly very good, they aren't unbeatable. Not only did Miya drop a set to Glutonny, but Luminosity Makes Big Moves wasn't even won by one of those 4. To end this video on a fun tidbit, the combined duo of acola and Tweek now have the same number of major wins as MKLeo himself. The top echelon of both North America and Japan being somewhat set in stone, the only thing that's left is to see them duke it out against each other. And fret not, that's exactly what Genesis, happening at the beginning of February, seems to be setting the stage for.